Hey, before we get started with this, if you're watching this as it comes out, I want you to know that you should definitely go subscribe to Ace Creeper's second channel. Somebody hacked into his first account, and he's having trouble getting back into that. And hopefully, if you're watching this in the future, he's already got it back. But if you are watching this now as it comes out, please go do him a favor. Go check out his channel, give him some support because he could really use it. He's a great content creator, and hopefully he can continue making some great videos on his second channel until he gets his first one back. And with that said, let's move on to this ranking. So before we actually do the ranking, I want to get some stuff established. First is that this is only Modern Era Who. I'm not including Classic because I haven't seen all of that. But with Modern Who, I'm not including every episode that they appear in because some of those episodes are like the Wedding of River Song where they're just barely even a cameo. So I'm not including episodes where I don't feel like the Daleks do enough in them. In every episode on this list, the Daleks at least do enough to justify it qualifying for this list, even if they aren't the main part of the episode. And there are going to be some spoilers in this video. If you have not seen Modern Era Doctor Who, then stop watching now. With all of that stuff established, let's get into this personal ranking of the Dalek stories in Modern Era Doctor Who. Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks is the only Dalek story that I think is outright bad. Not only is this a boring episode, but the stuff done with the Daleks is uninteresting. I don't like the idea of a Dalek-human hybrid, and I think its execution is poor in this story. At least you have the Doctor and Martha, but they can't save a bad episode. Victory of the Daleks is a step closer to being a good Dalek story and still comes short. It's got some kind of interesting stuff, but as has been said, this is basically a poor Power of the Daleks. The stuff with the cyborg doesn't really work, and the love stuff doesn't work in this episode, and they're just not that interesting, and they get defeated by a Jammy Dodger, which, I don't know, it's just kind of silly. It just doesn't work for me. And I would love to like this episode, but sadly, this one just doesn't come together the way it needs to. Into the Dalek, we are getting much closer to what I would constitute as a good Dalek story. This is a pretty good episode. I enjoy Capaldi and the Dalek. There's some really interesting stuff going on here with Rusty, and ultimately, I like the ideas within this one, but the way they're executed isn't quite the best. So this one is a little bit more mixed for me, and I do like more than I dislike, but on the whole, it's not a great Dalek story, but it's pretty good. Asylum of the Daleks. This is an episode I know many people don't like and many people do like, and I happen to be one of the people that does really like this story because it's just a lot of fun. It's really enjoyable. I like seeing this version of Clara, the stuff that goes on with her. The twist at the end I think is really good and interesting, and I just really enjoy this one. And I like just the stuff with the really crazy Daleks down on the planet and how much fun this episode is, having a really interesting ending with the Doctor discovering that Oswin Oswald is actually a Dalek. I really like that, and I think that makes for a very memorable story. Resolution. This story really has some of the best Dalek stuff that we've seen in the last decade. It's like Dalek, but just a different version of it. It's a different take on a singular Dalek being such a big threat, and I really like that. Almost everything in this episode works. There's some stuff about the very end that I don't like, but the build-up with the Dalek and the way that it continues to get more powerful and forms its pieces together and takes over a human host and then gets its own shell. I really like all of that stuff, and it feels like it's built up really well. The resolution of this story doesn't entirely work, but I really like the majority of this story, even though the microwave oven, it does feel a little bit silly. But the biggest thing about this episode that I love is that it does make the Daleks feel like such a threat, and that is why this one is so memorable to me. Even though it's not one of the great Dalek stories, it is a really good one, and it has some really strong Dalek stuff, which you need to when the Daleks are the main foe of the episode. The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar. Now, this is when I wasn't sure about whether or not I was going to include it on this list because it is more of a Davros episode than a Dalek episode, but ultimately I decided there is enough stuff going on here with the Daleks, particularly with Clara Oswald and Missy, that it does constitute as a legitimate Dalek story. It's not just a cameo, and I really do think the Dalek stuff in this one is interesting, and the main stuff I like about this story is the dynamic of Davros and the Doctor. That's really interesting stuff to watch them together, and I really like Missy and Clara together, and I do enjoy the Dalek stuff in this, but it's not the most memorable part of the story. The stuff that I really love is the stuff with the Doctor and Davros, but I do like the Dalek stuff in this story. I think it's good. I think it's interesting. I like seeing Missy mess with Clara so much. And I just think this one is such a strong episode, primarily because of that Davros stuff. I think it's really great, and I love seeing him with Capaldi, and I just think this is a really, really solid story on the whole, and it has good Dalek stuff as well. Dalek. This is the point really around here in the ranking where everything is great. I love this story. I think it's really solid. This is one that every single time I rewatch it, I love it even more. It's just so great. I love this introduction in modern era Doctor Who to the Daleks. It's so expertly penned by Robert Shearman, and it's got some excellent stuff in here with the Dalek and the Ninth Doctor and Rose and the ending, which is really interesting. It just does some really unique stuff that Doctor Who doesn't really do outside of this story, while also making the Daleks such a great threat in this one. It's really a fantastic feat what's done here, because it's a really interesting emotional sort of ending with the Dalek, but you also have this menace to it that is present throughout the entire story. The Stolen Earth and Journey's End. I've just recently talked about this one, and yeah, it's a great story. I really like the stuff with the Daleks in here. They are presented as a great threat, as Russell T Davies managed to do close to consistently, and I think they're great in here. I think the stuff with Davros is really interesting, and of course the Supreme Dalek and Dalek Khan, they're great, and I love all of this stuff within the story. And not only is it just a great story, but the stuff with the Daleks works really well, and I really like them as a threat within this one. But just the reason this one's so high is because it is a great episode, and I absolutely love everything that's done in here. Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways. Man, what a way to close out an era. To me, this is an excellent regeneration story, one of the absolute best. The Daleks are brilliant in it. The way the story progresses, and they're just so fantastic. It's a very interesting story, which does some different kinds of things, and of course has the Doctor regenerating, and has Rose resurrecting some people, and bringing back Captain Jack, and just the way this story ends and the way it builds and builds and builds with the Daleks coming in and murdering people, it's just so captivating, and I absolutely adore it as a final episode of a Doctor. It's definitely one of the absolute best regeneration stories, and I just love this one. Now, any of these top three could have been number one, but I think today I'm going to pick Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. They're so close, but this story just has a special place in my heart. The stuff that's done here with the Daleks and the Cybermen is great. The way the first part builds and introduces both of them as threats and leaves you on a cliffhanger into that second part, which is even better. I just think it's really well done. And that said, any of these top three could have been number one. I love them all. They're so close for me. But I'm picking this one because it has such a special place in my heart, and I just absolutely love it. And I love the emotional stuff with Rose and the Doctor saying goodbye on Bad Wolf Bay, and her being taken to the other dimension. I think it's fantastic, and I love the Dalek stuff as well. And I think this is just one of Doctor Who's best stories. I think the top half of this list really is all some of Doctor Who's best, but this one comes in at number one because I just adore this one. So that's it. That's my list. Those are the top 10 Dalek stories. How would you rank the Dalek stories? I would be happy to see a list, especially since ours are not going to align. So I would love to know people's different feelings on this, because this is not representative of your feelings. It's only representative of mine. So yeah, that's going to do it for now, folks. I will be back again Sunday for a review of The Web of Fear. So I hope to see you around for some of that. But if not, that's totally cool. Just know that I appreciate your time here today. And with that said, thank you very much for watching. Take care and have a lovely week.